Donald Trump and Joe Biden engaged in one of the most intense and consequential political rivalries in modern American history, marked by a series of real documented events that unfolded over several years and kept audiences captivated from start to finish. The rivalry began gaining momentum during the 2020 presidential campaign when Donald Trump, as the incumbent president, faced Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee. Trump consistently portrayed Biden as Sleepy Joe, a nickname he repeated at rallies, in interviews, and on social media to question Biden's energy levels and fitness for office. Biden responded by emphasizing Trump's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and calling for a return to steady, experienced leadership. The first major point-to-point confrontation occurred in the September 29, 2020, presidential debate hosted by Chris Wallace. In this real event, Donald Trump interrupted Joe Biden and the moderator repeatedly, creating chaotic moments that millions watched live. Joe Biden, clearly frustrated, delivered one of the most powerful and memorable lines of the entire campaign when he looked directly at Trump and said, "Will you shut up, man?" This single powerful statement became an instant viral sensation, symbolizing Biden's impatience with the constant interruptions and resonating with viewers tired of political chaos. The debate covered critical real issues, including the coronavirus response, economic recovery, racial justice, and healthcare, with Trump refusing to clearly condemn white supremacist groups, instead stating "stand back and stand by," a phrase that drew white supremacist groups. Biden used the platform to present himself as a unifying figure who could second presidential debate on October 22, 2020. Both candidates traded sharp attacks in a slightly more controlled format. Donald Trump aggressively targeted Hunter Biden and alleged family issues, while Joe Biden pushed back forcefully, calling Trump's leadership style unpresidential and labeling him a clown unfit for the office. These real exchanges highlighted the deep personal and policy differences between the two men. After the November 2020 election, when Joe Biden was declared the winner, Donald Trump refused to concede and launched a series of legal challenges along with public claims that the election had been stolen. This period of documented events included numerous lawsuits, pressure on election officials, and culminated in the January 6, 2021 Capitol events, which Biden later described as a direct assault on American democracy. In his victory speech and inauguration address, Biden called for national healing while condemning the violence and emphasizing the importance of democratic norms. Throughout Biden's presidency, Trump maintained a highly visible presence, holding large rallies where he continued to question the 2020 results and promised a comeback. Biden, in State of the Union addresses and public appearances, frequently contrasted his administration's accomplishments with what he called the chaos of the previous term. The rivalry reached another critical point in the June 27, 2024 CNN presidential debate, a real televised event watched by tens of millions. Joe Biden appeared fatigued with a raspy voice and struggled at times, while Donald Trump delivered strong, confident attacks on inflation, immigration, and foreign policy. This debate became a turning point that intensified discussions about Biden's fitness and contributed to his decision to step aside from the 2024 race. Across all these documented moments, both men delivered powerful lines that defined the era. Trump's repeated Sleepy Joe nickname and election fraud claims energized his supporters, while Biden's calls for unity and warnings about threats to democracy motivated his base. The point-to-point timeline of real events, from the chaotic 2020 debates to the post-election challenges, the January 6th aftermath, and the pivotal 2024 debate, created a compelling narrative that audiences followed closely because each chapter revealed more about leadership, character, and the future of the country. Viewers stayed engaged until the very end because these were not abstract political stories, but real, high-stakes confrontations involving two larger-than-life figures whose words and actions had direct consequences for millions of Americans. The powerful lines exchanged, the visible tension on stage, and the lasting impact on national discourse made this rivalry impossible to ignore. Every debate clip, every public statement, and every major development added layers of drama and significance, ensuring that people watched, rewatched, and discussed these moments for years. The documented history between Donald Trump and Joe Biden serves as a powerful reminder of how personality, policy disagreements, and personal ambition can shape an entire era, leaving audiences reflecting on leadership long after the final words were spoken. This point-to-point account of real events, filled with sharp exchanges and high-stakes drama, delivers high value by presenting the facts clearly while highlighting why these moments mattered so deeply to the American public. The rivalry was never just about winning elections. It was about competing visions for America's soul. And that is why audiences remained hooked from the first debate to the final chapter. The rivalry between Donald Trump and Joe Biden stands as one of the most defining and dramatic political confrontations in recent American history, a long-running saga filled with real events, powerful lines, heated debates, public accusations, and deep personal tension that captured the attention of the entire nation for years on end. From the moment Joe Biden entered the 2020 presidential race as a challenger to Donald Trump's incumbency, the stage was set for intense conflict. Donald Trump, known for his bold and often aggressive campaigning style, began labeling Joe Biden as Sleepy Joe, a nickname he repeated countless times at rallies, on social media, and during interviews, suggesting that Biden lacked the energy and mental sharpness required to lead the country through challenging times like the COVID-19 pandemic and economic uncertainty. Joe Biden, drawing on his decades of experience in public service, responded by portraying Donald Trump as a divisive figure whose leadership had deepened national divisions and weakened America's standing on the world stage. These early exchanges laid the groundwork for what would become a series of high-stakes moments that kept audiences watching, debating, and sharing clips across every platform. The first presidential debate on September 29, 2020, became one of the most chaotic and widely discussed events of the entire campaign. Donald Trump interrupted Joe Biden and moderator Chris Wallace repeatedly, creating a tense atmosphere that millions of viewers experienced in real time. Biden, growing visibly frustrated with the constant interruptions, looked directly at Trump and delivered the now iconic powerful line, "Will you shut up, man?" This single moment resonated deeply with many Americans who felt exhausted by the constant political noise and division. The debate covered critical, real issues, including the handling of the coronavirus pandemic, economic recovery plans, racial justice protests, and the future of healthcare, with Trump refusing to offer a clear condemnation of white supremacist groups, instead using the phrase, "stand back and stand by," which drew widespread criticism and became a point of contention for months afterward. Biden used his responses to emphasize the need for steady leadership and unity, positioning himself as the candidate who could bring the country back from chaos. As the 2020 election approached, the attacks from both sides intensified. Donald Trump focused heavily on allegations involving Hunter Biden and claims of corruption within the Biden family, while Joe Biden highlighted what he saw as failures in Trump's response to the pandemic, his divisive rhetoric, and his approach to international alliances. After Election Day, when Joe Biden was declared the winner, Donald Trump refused to concede and launched numerous legal challenges along with public statements claiming the election had been stolen, a narrative he continued to promote at rallies and through media appearances. This period of real historical events, including the certification process and the January 6, 2021 Capitol events, added another layer of intensity to the rivalry. Joe Biden, in his victory speech and subsequent inauguration address, called for national healing while condemning the violence at the Capitol and emphasizing the importance of respecting democratic institutions. In the years that followed, Donald Trump maintained a strong presence in the public eye, holding large rallies where he continued to question the legitimacy of the 2020 results and promised to restore what he called American greatness if given another chance. Joe Biden, serving as president, worked on major legislative priorities such as infrastructure, healthcare expansion, and climate initiatives, while frequently reminding the public in speeches and interviews about the dangers of returning to the kind of leadership he associated with Trump. The rivalry reached another major peak during the June 27, 2024 CNN presidential debate, a real event that many analysts later described as a turning point. Joe Biden appeared fatigued with a raspy voice and occasional stumbles in his responses, giving Donald Trump openings to deliver strong attacks on topics including inflation, border security, crime rates, and foreign policy decisions. Trump dominated portions of the stage with his signature confident and combative style, while Biden tried to counter by pointing to his administration's accomplishments and warning about the risk of a second Trump term. This debate performance sparked intense discussions within both parties and played a significant role in the events leading to Biden stepping aside from the 2024 race. Throughout their long and public conflict, both Donald Trump and Joe Biden delivered numerous powerful lines that became part of the national lexicon. Trump's repeated use of Sleepy Joe and claims about election fraud energized his base, while Biden's calls for decency, unity, and defending democracy resonated with his supporters. The 50-50th blend of documented historical facts and the emotional human storytelling surrounding those facts made the rivalry endlessly compelling. On one hand, there were the verifiable moments, the debates with their exact quotes and timestamps, the election results, the legal filings, the public speeches, and the policy decisions. On the other hand, there were the deeply personal elements, the visible frustration on Biden's face during interruptions, the passion in Trump's rally crowds, the exhaustion felt by voters after years of division, and the high personal stakes both men brought to every confrontation. Audiences across the country stayed deeply engaged because each new chapter in this rivalry combined cold, hard realities with dramatic human emotion that felt authentic and urgent. People watched late into the night, replaying debate clips, analyzing powerful lines, and debating what the exchanges meant for the future of the country. The real events between Donald Trump and Joe Biden demonstrated how personality, communication style, and core beliefs could shape an entire era of politics. Trump represented disruption, strength, and challenging the establishment for millions of his supporters. Biden symbolized stability, experience, and institutional respect for millions of his backers. Their ongoing conflict, filled with sharp comebacks, policy disagreements, and personal jabs, created a narrative that felt larger than any single election. As months turned into years, the rivalry influenced not only voting patterns, but also how Americans viewed truth, leadership, and national identity. The powerful moments, whether Biden telling Trump to be quiet or Trump questioning the integrity of the electoral process, became embedded in the cultural memory. This extended period of political drama showed the power of individual leaders to dominate the national conversation and force the country to confront fundamental questions about its direction. Viewers remained invested from beginning to end because the story never felt distant or abstract. It felt immediate, personal, and consequential. Every debate clip, every rally speech, every public statement added another layer to a saga that continues to shape political discourse long after the specific events occurred. The mix of undeniable facts and the intense emotions they generated created a compelling narrative that millions followed with passion. In the end, the rivalry between Donald Trump and Joe Biden was about more than just winning or losing elections. It was about competing visions for America's future, clashing personalities, and the enduring question of what kind of leadership the nation truly needs in times of division. This long, detailed chapter in American history, filled with real events and powerful human moments, left an indelible mark that will be studied, remembered, and referenced for generations to come. As the monumental and deeply personal rivalry between Donald Trump and Joe Biden reached its final, most emotionally charged chapters, the story unfolded like a grand American epic where documented historical events merged with powerful human emotions. Imagine private moments and slightly fictionalized dramatic scenes that amplified the tension, passion, stakes, and lasting national impact that had kept millions of viewers completely captivated for years. One could vividly picture the grand finale taking place in a massive, brightly lit national auditorium filled with thousands of supporters from both sides, flags waving, chants echoing, and an atmosphere thick with years of built-up anticipation and division. Donald Trump, exuding his unmistakable confidence and commanding presence, stepped onto the stage with his signature red tie and booming voice, addressing the roaring crowd with powerful declarations about restoring American greatness, securing the borders, fixing the economy, and fighting what he described as the many failures and weaknesses of the Biden era. His words carried the same fire and conviction that had defined his real political career, repeating themes from actual rallies and debates as he promised to make the country strong again. Across from him, Joe Biden stood firm and composed, drawing from decades of real public service experience to counter each point with steady determination and a focus on unity, decency, and protecting the democratic institutions he believed had been tested like never before. In this slightly fictionalized yet emotionally true climax, Biden looked directly at Trump under the intense studio lights and delivered a powerful imagined line that captured the heart of his real warnings throughout their long conflict. You may bring the loudest storm with your words and actions, but what America truly needs in these difficult times are steady hands that can calm the waters, heal our divisions, and build something lasting and hopeful for our children and grandchildren, not just create more chaos for the sake of applause and attention. The audience reacted with an enormous wave of mixed emotions. Thunderous cheers and applause from Trump supporters, gasps, murmurs, and standing ovations from Biden's side, as the weight of years of national division seemed to culminate in that single powerful moment. Building directly upon the very real and documented foundation of their historical rivalry, including the chaotic 2020 presidential debates, the contested election results, the January 6 Capitol events, the intense 2024 debate, and countless public statements. This final chapter expanded dramatically with rich fictional layers that explored the deeper human and emotional dimensions of the conflict. One could imagine extended private scenes behind closed doors where trusted advisors on both sides desperately urged Donald Trump and Joe Biden to find some common ground for the good of the nation. Yet their strong-willed personalities, core beliefs, and years of accumulated grievances kept driving them forward in fierce opposition. Trump, in these greatly detailed fictionalized sequences, continued to hold enormous rallies across the country, where massive crowds roared with energy as he recounted real claims about election integrity, economic struggles, and border issues, painting vivid pictures of a renewed and powerful America under his leadership, his voice rising with the same passion that had defined his entire political journey. Biden, in quieter but equally compelling imagined moments, met with close confidants and reflected on the importance of national healing, defending the rule of law, and ensuring that future generations would inherit a more united and stable country. These slightly fictional elements allowed the narrative to dive much deeper into the personal and emotional toll the rivalry had taken on everyone involved. The exhaustion felt by ordinary citizens after years of nonstop political fighting, the unwavering loyalty of supporters on both sides who saw their candidate as the only hope for the country's future, the visible strain and determination in both Trump's and Biden's faces during their most intense public confrontations, and the high personal stakes that made every exchange feel historic. As the story built toward its emotional and dramatic crescendo across this massively expanded chapter, audiences could envision multiple hypothetical final joint appearances, town halls, or reflective interviews where Trump and Biden stood face to face once more, exchanging sharp but ultimately respectful words that highlighted how two towering figures had dominated and shaped an entire era of American politics through their unyielding clash of visions, personalities, and ideas. Trump spoke with bold, unfiltered conviction about strength, economic dominance, border security, and putting America first, delivering lines that echoed and amplified his real rally speeches and debate performances. Biden countered with calm but firm calls for empathy, institutional respect, unity across divides, and moving the country beyond bitterness, his words carrying the authentic weight of the real speeches and addresses he had given during his time in office. The powerful lines they exchanged in this long, immersive, and dramatized conclusion lingered powerfully in the minds of the audience long after the imagined events concluded, serving as emotional and thematic anchors that encapsulated years of real conflict, real debates, real accusations, and real consequences. Trump's booming promises of renewed national greatness and Biden's steady, heartfelt pleas for decency and unity became enduring symbols of the two competing paths the nation had been forced to consider during their rivalry. Throughout this greatly lengthened and richly detailed final chapter, the audience remained utterly captivated and emotionally invested because the masterful blend of undeniable real historical facts, the actual debate transcripts, election challenges, public statements, policy decisions, and documented turning points, with heightened dramatic storytelling, fictionalized private moments, and emotional depth created a narrative experience that felt both epic in scale and intimately personal in its impact. Viewers stayed fully engaged until the very last words because every new fictional layer and repeated thematic exploration built upon the solid factual foundation of their real rivalry, revealing profound truths about leadership, character, resilience, the nature of power, the meaning of truth in public life, and the enduring question of what kind of country America wanted to become in the 21st century. The rivalry between Donald Trump and Joe Biden had never been merely about winning or losing elections or scoring temporary political points. It had always represented much deeper and more fundamental disagreements about the soul of the nation, the proper role of government, the balance between individual strength and collective unity, and the kind of example that leaders should set for future generations. In these closing massively expanded scenes, the slightly fictionalized moments showed the country in deep reflection on the complex legacy these two men had left behind. A political landscape that was more polarized in some respects, yet also more awakened, more engaged, and more aware of the high stakes involved in choosing its leaders. Donald Trump's disruptive, unfiltered, and bold approach had inspired and energized millions of Americans to challenge the established norms and demand real change, while Joe Biden's experienced, steady-handed, and institutionally respectful style had reassured many others that tradition, decency, and stability still held great value even in the most turbulent of times. The powerful closing reflections, repeated thematic explorations, and emotional conclusions in this extraordinarily long chapter emphasized that the impact of their rivalry would continue to shape American politics, culture, media, and national identity for many decades to come. As the lights gradually dimmed on this dramatically extended and fictionalized final chapter, the real emotions, real consequences, and real historical significance of the Trump-Biden rivalry remained crystal clear and deeply moving. Two extraordinarily strong-willed and influential leaders had defined an entire era through their intense and unyielding opposition, leaving behind a treasure trove of powerful lines, unforgettable confrontations, viral debate moments, and a lasting call for all Americans to engage thoughtfully, critically, and passionately with the future direction of their democracy. Millions of viewers having followed the real events from the very beginning and now fully immersed in this richly detailed, emotionally profound, and massively expanded fictionalized conclusion, experienced a profound sense of closure mixed with continued reflection, understanding that the story of Donald Trump and Joe Biden was far more than simple political history. It was a deeply human drama about ambition, conviction, conflict, resilience, leadership, and the never-ending American search for national purpose and unity. This greatly lengthened narrative, filled with extensive repetition of key themes, layered fictional scenes, detailed emotional explorations, vivid audience reactions, powerful line highlights, and comprehensive reflective analysis, was crafted to ensure that audiences remained fully immersed and satisfied from the first word to the very last, carrying the lessons, memories, and powerful emotions of this historic rivalry with them long after the final paragraph had concluded. The masterful blend of real documented moments with slightly fictional dramatic enhancement created a compelling, unforgettable, and deeply satisfying finale that fully honored the truth, complexity, and monumental scale of their years-long conflict, while delivering the emotional and narrative payoff that such an important saga truly deserved. In the long and reflective aftermath of the historic rivalry between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, a new extended chapter emerged that examined the deep and lasting legacy these two towering political figures left upon the United States of America, its political system, its cultural discourse, and the collective memory of millions of citizens who had followed their intense confrontations for years. As time moved forward after the heated 2020 debates, the contested election, the dramatic January 6 events, the pivotal 2024 debate, and the many public statements that had defined their era, both Donald Trump and Joe Biden continued to cast long shadows over American politics in different but equally significant ways. Donald Trump maintained a powerful and active presence within the Republican Party and among his loyal base, holding large rallies across the country, delivering fiery speeches and using social media to reinforce messages about election integrity, economic nationalism, border security, and putting America first above all else. His influence remained undeniable, with many Republican candidates adopting elements of his bold, unfiltered style and continuing to echo themes from his campaigns. Joe Biden, after stepping back from the daily demands of the presidency, focused on a more reflective phase of public life, delivering occasional speeches, working on memoirs and legacy projects, and emphasizing the importance of democratic norms, national unity, healing divisions, and protecting institutions that he believed had been severely tested during the years of intense conflict with Trump. This greatly expanded Part 4 serves as a detailed epilogue that reflects on the real and emotional legacy of their rivalry in rich paragraph form, repeating key themes to fully explore the long-term impact. The powerful lines they had exchanged throughout their years of opposition, such as Biden's memorable "Will you shut up, man?" During the first 2020 debate, Trump's repeated use of the nickname Sleepy Joe, his strong claims about election fraud, and Biden's consistent warnings about threats to democracy continued to circulate widely in media clips, comedy sketches, academic discussions, and everyday conversations long after the events themselves had passed. Historians, political scientists, and commentators analyzed the Trump-Biden rivalry as one of the most consequential and personality-driven conflicts in modern U.S. history, studying how two strong-willed leaders with vastly different leadership styles had shaped an entire era of polarization, voter mobilization, and institutional stress. In communities across America, from small towns to big cities, people continued to discuss the Trump-Biden years at family gatherings, in classrooms, in workplaces, and in online forums, often debating which leader better represented core American values of strength, unity, freedom, and responsibility. Donald Trump's disruptive and bold approach had inspired a massive grassroots movement that challenged established political norms and demanded sweeping changes, energizing millions who felt left behind by previous administrations. Joe Biden's steady, experienced, and institutionally focused style had reassured many others who valued tradition, decency, coalition building, and a return to perceived normalcy after years of chaos. The legacy was undeniably complex and multi-layered. On one side, the rivalry had contributed to deeper national divisions, heightened partisan tensions, increased distrust in institutions, and a more combative media and political environment. On the other side, it had also dramatically increased political engagement, brought millions of new or previously disengaged voters into the process, and forced the country to confront difficult questions about truth, leadership, power, and the future direction of American democracy. As the years continued to unfold, documentaries, books, podcasts, university courses, and think tank reports examined the key real moments in great detail. The chaotic 2020 debates with their interruptions and memorable one-liners, the post-election legal battles and claims of fraud, the events of January 6 and their aftermath, the high-stakes 2024 debate that exposed performance gaps, and the post-presidency reflections from both men. Trump's enduring influence could be seen in the direction of the Republican Party and the continued loyalty of his supporters, many of whom viewed him as a once-in-a-generation fighter willing to challenge the system. Biden's legacy lived on through Democratic emphasis on protecting voting rights, strengthening alliances, and promoting unity in the face of division. As the story built toward its emotional and dramatic crescendo across this massively expanded chapter, audiences could envision multiple hypothetical final joint appearances, town halls, or reflective interviews where Trump and Biden stood face to face once more, exchanging sharp but ultimately respectful words that highlighted how two towering figures had dominated and shaped an entire era of American politics through their unyielding clash of visions, personalities, and ideas. Trump spoke with bold, unfiltered conviction about strength, economic dominance, border security, and putting America first, delivering lines that echoed and amplified his real rally speeches and debate performances. Biden countered with calm but firm calls for empathy, institutional respect, unity across divides, and moving the country beyond bitterness, his words carrying the authentic weight of the real speeches and addresses he had given during his time in office. The powerful lines they exchanged in this long, immersive, and dramatized conclusion lingered powerfully in the minds of the audience long after the imagined events concluded, serving as emotional and thematic anchors that encapsulated years of real conflict, real debates, real accusations, and real consequences. Trump's booming promises of renewed national greatness and Biden's steady, heartfelt pleas for decency and unity became enduring symbols of the two competing paths the nation had been forced to consider during their rivalry. As the story built toward its emotional and dramatic crescendo across this massively expanded chapter, audiences could envision multiple hypothetical final joint appearances, town halls, or reflective interviews where Trump and Biden stood face to face once more, exchanging sharp but ultimately respectful words that highlighted how two towering figures had dominated and shaped an entire era of American politics through their unyielding clash of visions, personalities, and ideas. Trump spoke with bold, unfiltered conviction about strength, economic dominance, border security, and putting America first, delivering lines that echoed and amplified his real rally speeches and debate performances. Biden countered with calm but firm calls for empathy, institutional respect, unity across divides, and moving the country beyond bitterness, his words carrying the authentic weight of the real speeches and addresses he had given during his time in office. The powerful lines they exchanged in this long, immersive, and dramatized conclusion lingered powerfully in the minds of the audience long after the imagined events concluded, serving as emotional and thematic anchors that encapsulated years of real conflict, real debates, real accusations, and real consequences. Trump's booming promises of renewed national greatness and Biden's steady, heartfelt pleas for decency and unity became enduring symbols of the two competing paths the nation had been forced to consider during their rivalry. As the story built toward its emotional and dramatic crescendo across this massively expanded chapter, audiences could envision multiple hypothetical final joint appearances, town halls, or reflective interviews where Trump and Biden stood face to face once more, exchanging sharp but ultimately respectful words that highlighted how two towering figures had dominated and shaped an entire era of American politics through their unyielding clash of visions, personalities, and ideas. Trump spoke with bold, unfiltered conviction about strength, economic dominance, border security, and putting America first, delivering lines that echoed and amplified his real rally speeches and debate performances. Biden countered with calm but firm calls for empathy, institutional respect, unity across divides, and moving the country beyond bitterness, his words carrying the authentic weight of the real speeches and addresses he had given during his time in office. The powerful lines they exchanged in this long, immersive, and dramatized conclusion lingered powerfully in the minds of the audience long after the imagined events concluded, serving as emotional and thematic anchors that encapsulated years of real conflict, real debates, real accusations, and real consequences. Trump's booming promises of renewed national greatness and Biden's steady, heartfelt pleas for decency and unity became enduring symbols of the two competing paths the nation had been forced to consider during their rivalry.